It's after 4 p.m. Central African time as we take you to the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, the DRC says it will now lift its ban on cobalt exports from the 16th of October. However, it does intend to manage global supply by imposing annual export quotas. You will remember that the DRC initially implemented a 3-month export ban on cobalt. This was earlier this year in the month of February. They did this in an effort to push up the low cobalt prices, which surged in response. The country's authority for the regulation and control of strategic mineral substances markets says with the planned quotas, miners will be allowed to ship up to 18,125 tons of cobalt for the rest of 2025, with annual caps of 96,600 tons in 2026 as well as 2027. For more on this, we joined on the line by Peter Major, the Director of Mining at Modern Corporate Solutions. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Thami. Thank you very much.
So let's take a look at this move to replace a ban on cobalt exports with quotas. What impact will this have on global cobalt prices?
Look, there's always a delayed reaction because if you look at when the ban officially took place, the first end of 3 months into this year, the price continued to fall. So if we look at exactly 2 years from today, the price of cobalt was around $33,000 a ton. Well, it kept on falling until about July, August. Yeah, I'd say until about July this year, June, July. It fell from 33,000 to 23,000, maybe even a little lower. So it's like the ban didn't have any effect because the prices were continuing down. But now the price is already back to 33,000. So maybe it was a delayed reaction of the ban, but maybe it was also peace negotiations with Rwanda and the M23 rebels. Because when you first put the ban on, you just drive the sales illegally. You know, the mining continues, and maybe the big producers, they're easier to keep in line than the multitude of small producers. Kind of like in South Africa. We might be producing officially 100 tons a year, but we're probably producing another 50 to 75 tons illegally. Now, that doesn't slow down just because of proclamations by the government. But I think this is a worthwhile exercise by the DRC because they control 70% of the world's cobalt, kind of like China with rare earths. When you control such a large percentage, it makes sense that you have literal control of the production and of the sales, you know, to try and keep it from this volatile, crazy pricing that cobalt is famous for.
So let's look at this, Peter, and ask, was the imposition of this suspension successful? Can one categorically say that the incline in prices was directly related to this, or are there other factors that might have played into the change in prices?
Yeah, there are other factors, but I think the ban had the biggest effect because that did stop exports from the large producers. And the large producers are probably responsible for at least 70% of the 96,000 tons that Congo produces. So it did have an effect. It took a few months to kick in. And I think it's going to work going forward. It's definitely going to help stabilize prices because these cobalt prices, every 3 or 4 years, they fall as low as 20,000 a ton. Then they shoot up for a year or two as high as 90,000 a ton. And, you know, at 90,000 a ton, it just brings in more and more production. You want to stabilize it somewhere around 40 or 50, and you want to try and manage the production so you can keep those sort of margins.
Now, the extension on the ban on exports saw the likes of Glencore and China's CMOC group declare force majeure. How might this shift affect the competitive positions of these other major cobalt producers?
Yeah, good question. I don't have a great answer. The Chinese would like to export as much as possible. and that helps keep the price as low as possible. Glencore, they would like to export nearly as much as possible, but they want to do it at a better price. They want to get a decent profit margin that allows them to get a return on investment and to spend capital improving their operations and maybe expanding. So Glencore is much more profit oriented, free market oriented. Well, the Chinese are probably ultimate free market. They just want to produce as much as possible, as cheap as possible. And it's more for the good of the country, China, than it is for the producer.
So if we look at international buyers, how might they respond to the quota system? And I'm talking now in terms of sourcing.
Look, most of the buyers are probably indirectly middlemen, and they only make money buying and selling. They might make a little less if the price of cobalt is low. They might make more if the price of cobalt is high. But they're like stockbrokers. They make money by the turnaround, by the volume. So when you got a ban and they're no longer allowed to even trade, gee, then they're going to starve to death, or they're going to get used to eating rations. So, yeah, the traders were greatly affected by this. The producers, yeah, them too, the official producers, because now they've got all this working capital tied up. But the illicits, because the DRC has so many illicits, the ban's only partially effective, and it affects the legitimate, transparent, large producers more than it does the non-transparent, opaque, small producers that are already using middlemen. The big guy gets affected the most.
And we see that in other industries as well. There'll always be an illicit market, but any attempts to try and regulate it at this level does ultimately affect those who are trading legitimately. But we thank you very much for your insight, Peter, as we break down this latest development. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Thami. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. That was Peter Major. He's the Director of Mining at Modern Corporate Solutions. So there you have it, DRC lifting the ban from October the 16th, but putting other regulations in place to try and monitor the value of cobalt and the price of exports for cobalt. For the rest of 2025, there are going to be miners will be allowed to ship up to 18,185 tons of cobalt, and with caps of 96,600 tons. And those are going to be implementable for the next 2 years. That's 2026 and 2027. It's gone 22 minutes after 4 p.m.
Get Channel Africa on